Jack here, owner of Hockey Alley, bringing you back hockey history and sticks, that is. I got my friend here, Holmes Gassimi, and this is a segment about the history of hockey sticks. How are you, Holmes?
Good, Jack. Look, see this again. I yap so much that we do another second segment.
Yeah, it's okay. That's what we want to talk about hockey history and give a history about the past of the hockey sticks that have been forgotten and some that are newer. Um, Yeah, I wanted to ask you if you remember the Reebok 9K stick. They used to make a shaft and a one piece. What did you think of that one?
Yeah, I I've always been a fan of like technology that's in like geometrical design technology, because that's something that people see. Like, your eyes are drawn to it. You understand? Like when we did like the Z bubble, or when we did the some of our blades. That had like a geometric shape to them, or even after I left, even you look at current sticks, Warrior with their covert line that has like the asymmetrical shaft.
Yes.
At the tip side, that or the Easton, the S15, 17s, that oval shape. So geometrical designs, are always something that I think as a from a design and marketing standpoint, you gravitate to. But you want there to be something behind the story. Like you want it to be real.
Yeah.
And the Reebok, the 9K, it was obviously a very specific shape. It had the holes down at the bottom, and they were telling a story like you have less drag, like because your shaft doesn't have air resistance when you're shooting. And I was like, I'm not sure that's the story I would have told, but it was a technology that Prince was using on rackets at the time, and it was I think they call it like the O technology or something. So, and on a tennis racket, the less air drag almost it made sense, because the way you swing and the speed with which you swing and the surface area is a little different as well. But for that Reebok, it made the manufacturing really difficult. We cut a few pieces off to see how it was done, and they used the bladder molding process to make these, and they were having a really tough time getting pressure into those shapes down at the bottom of the shaft. So I think there was a lot of breakage. We cut a couple open. There was like some type of like newspaper material in there.
Really?
So they were really doing their best to kind of fill those gaps as best they could, and really what ended up happening was that obviously brought the kick point way up, because there's no way you could design a kick point into the middle of that, or into a portion of that the old portion of the shaft. So super stiff, high kick point, and if that's your bag, you probably like the stick, and it works. But at the time that shaft came out, the move was really towards lower kick points, right? That was kind of the story being told, and it just wasn't really. I guess I would call like a truly effective use of geometrical design to tell a marketing story, or a good marketing story anyway. Whereas some of the other ones really do work. You go into a store, you see it's a different shape, you understand why it's supposed to be that shape, and you take it out, and if it does what theoretically it says it does, then you're golden. That's so when that works, then you're doing really well. And we, on our blade side, we had that with our Focus Flex blade, and with a Z bubble shaft, with like like a targeted and focused flex point on those. It's just it's a tough sport, to design for sometimes. And I know you remember the offset blade.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Remember?
man. It didn't take off. I mean, it was endorsed by Wayne Gretzky.
No.
The
Yeah,
Hesper.
but I mean, that's just like, it's again, you're taking a concept from another sport, right? Because you're saying the offset blade is a golf technology, but you're not stick handling in golf.
No.
So if all you're doing in hockey is shooting, okay, maybe that works. Like your hands stay ahead of the blade, and maybe that helps. I don't know, But if you're stick handling and you've grown up and you know where the puck is on your backhand when you're stick handling, and you're basically stabbing the puck every time.
Yeah.
So that was one where I was like, yeah, like not quite the Curtis curve of stick technologies there.
Yeah.
But that way, like the Curtis curve made sense for
Yes.
goalies. It absolutely made sense.
That was a great invention too.
Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I look back and some of these were, they're again with the Tree Lodge. That was manufactured by Innovative, and the guy, he was a nice guy.
Oh, Trilage. Yeah, I have one of those shafts.
You have one of those, yeah.
I didn't like it.
He would. No, I mean it's a triangle.
It was hurting my wrist. It was hurting my wrist when I was holding it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And but again, you have to. It's such an aggressive shape and such a different shape that even if you could really put your palm behind it when you shot and it made all the sense in the world. Like when you're stick handling, it's a triangle.
Yeah.
And maybe you get used to it, and he was a nice guy. I'd see him in the rooms when I was going and peddling Nike. Particularly in California, there would be a bunch of guys that would come in. There would be Innovative would come in, Pro Kennex, which was a tennis, like a racket company, and they had a product that was super light but not very durable. They had, I think Jeff Friesen used their stick for a while. So I'd see him in their rep in the room, and the Tree Lodge guy would come, and he's a nice guy, but that's again really, it's. Those are technologies that are maybe a little bit more aspirational than functional. So it just doesn't work. Once we established our line, my push was really about materials. If you're constrained by geometry for the most part, like what is in your hands. Like if you want it to be square, or you want it to be concave. Or some combination of the two, like some sort of hourglass design for the handle side. What are you going to do? What can you do with materials? How do you make it more durable and lighter? And that's really what I tried to push from an R&D side.
Yes.
But we're talking, that was 15 years ago, and now you see really, really light sticks out there now.
Yeah. What do you think the materials are? Like as far as they put on a stick, like nano material, boron, that stuff has been around, right? It's nothing new.
Well, I mean, yeah. Nano is, nano is something that we did at Easton even 15 years ago.
So it's nothing new.
No. Maybe maybe it's the technology is more accessible now from a price standpoint. Like I don't know, when someone says nano, like I don't know what part of the shaft they're referring to, what kind of process they're referring to. Like with us, it ended up being like a patch of a specific graphite that was super light, and because it was nano, it was super durable, and we placed it in the blade, But again, it was conceptual at that point. We were using it, but it wasn't the whole stick, so that's that stuff, those concepts. And I mean, boron goes back to the early mid '80s in the tennis industry. Now, how do they incorporate it in stick today versus how it was incorporated into graphite, 40 years ago? I can't say, but the boron was great. It was super stiff. I used Prince had a boron model. Speaking of Prince is getting a lot of play in this conversation. They had a boron racket in the early mid '80s, and but again, it would crack because it was brittle. It's a super stiff but brittle material, which doesn't lend itself to hockey in a basic sense. So how that gets incorporated into material usage in a hockey stick today, I can't say. Unfortunately, I'm removed from that stuff for a while now, so I can only speak to it conceptually. But if there are companies making hockey sticks that are 350 grams or whatever, is there a sub 300 at this point?
They said 330. They said the new Bauer's at 330 or something like that, but I wonder how it's going to hold up.
It's really aggressive. That's really aggressive. I mean, like even when we were doing the stealth, there was a point where we were asking ourselves, like, hey, is this too light? You know, at some point, like you want to have a little bit of inertia behind the stick.
Yes.
You know, it's like, is it too light? You know, like how do you offset the weight reduction with how do you manipulate the flex of the flex profile to offset the weight reduction?
Yeah.
You know, and I'm sure some of that is being done now, but you know, we're really talking about like geometry technology, like the hole in the Bauer stick blade.
Oh yeah.
The model, there's the ADV, I think it's called.
Yeah.
Like that, you know, what is the purpose of that other than you can recognize that it's a Bauer when it's not taped? You know,
Yeah.
like a guy's going to use it untaped. Like again, is it the less air drag or? I don't know. Yeah, I look at these. I'm like, all right, it looks cool. I just don't know what the functional purpose of it is. So yeah, I think there are companies out there. You know, as I look at it right now, like first of all, there's so many models.
Yes.
That's the impressive part. Like, you know, like at Easton, we were really trying to cull down the models we had because in the end, when you have so many flexes, so many patterns, and so many finishes, like you're asking retailers to carry so many SKUs and then left and right too, right?
Yeah.
So you know, so when you know, like when I look at a Bauer that has like 3 lines really, and then different models within those lines, like that's a lot. It's a lot, but guys seem to gravitate to it, you know, and I think the one company like CCM, I think has a more traditional approach. I think they have like the 2. I don't know if they have 3 lines at this point, but they had the two traditional, like it had like the super aggressive and like the more traditional design, you know, between their tax and their jet speed lines. But they've done a marvelous job of becoming relevant to the stick category and now being like really competitive in it. You know, they 10-15 years ago they weren't, like their sticks weren't that great. They didn't have control of the manufacturing. They outsourced a lot of it. It wasn't really a big focus for them. It was just like a branding piece that they kind of put out there. You know, it was a category, but it wasn't certainly not something that they viewed as a performance category that required a lot of their resources to develop. But that's changed. That's absolutely changed. The mindset of the company is completely different there, and you can see it in the product they're putting out. So those two, we talk about the history of sticks, and we started like, I go back to when Nike entered the scene, and it was CCM and Bauer.
Yeah, that's true.
Right. So
sure wouldn't know.
30 years later, it's CCM and Bauer. Like we've done a big dance and a big ring around the rosy, but we're back to those 2 brands. You know,
the big names.
There were boutique brands like Easton and Louisville at that time. There were boutique brands, and now you have boutique brands like True. I don't know if I'm missing. Is there another stick company that's relevant?
Reebok? No, Reebok's out.
No, yeah, they sold CCM. So it's CCM, and it's Bauer. You know, there's no. I'm saying, oh my God, this is
Warrior.
Isaac is gonna hate me. Yeah, Warrior.
Yeah. Where do you?
Yeah. Well, yes, that's also like I would say the Warrior is probably what Easton was, 30 years ago in terms of the pecking order and the overall image in the marketplace, and True is like what Louisville was, 30 years ago.
Warrior makes a great product, though. I mean, out of all of them, it's my favorite company, and I refuse to use others.
I'm a little biased, but I mean, their product has definitely changed.
Yeah.
It's gotten better, for sure.
Yeah.
In many ways. So yeah, they've kind of settled on what they want their tool. Like they have the Alpha and they have the Covert, and that's kind of like they're not jumping around some brands anymore. Like, so they're really kind of reinforcing those messages, which I think is absolutely necessary in the marketplace that constantly changes, has a bunch of competition, and you're expecting people to pay a lot of attention to what you're doing if you're constantly changing the names and the colors. And how do you how does the customer draw a through line?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so
Yeah, I was going to ask you. So a company like Bauer comes out with a stick with a hole in the blade, right? And they only keep it for like 6 months or whatever. Then they're changing. Does that mean that they didn't succeed with that one with the hole in the blade? Is that
I
what it
mean,
comes down to? I
uh,
mean,
I think it depends. I mean, it may have not have held up in that version. They may have improved it. They may, I mean, I don't know if they kept the same sub brand and they just like the technology evolved in it. So it's tough to say. I mean, there are definitely sticks that have come out that just have not done well and went away very quickly.
Yeah.
But I can't say if that's the case. I mean, I've seen that. You probably see that specific product more now than you did, when they first kind of teased it 2-3 years ago. I don't really know. Well, again, guys tape their blades, and so you see some guys that kind of do the half tape job,
yeah,
like the toe to the mid. So there are a couple of guys you see actually using that blade because you see the like the edge of the opening.
yeah. I don't see too many using it in my place. I've seen maybe 4 out of like hundreds of kids. Only 4.
Yeah, I mean, it's also super expensive, right? And I don't know if that's a line that they have, takedown versions of, like
They do.
less expensive versions of that technology. I don't know.
They have juniors, but not the. I don't even know.
They do, yeah. So it's difficult to say, and I don't want to speculate on something that, I went into. I told you I went into a shop and you can't even get grip anymore. I was like, yeah, okay, all right, I'm gonna go shoot my old sticks now. But it's things are definitely different. I did notice that when Bauer bought Easton, they just shut it down. Like they bought it and they killed it. I mean, and I think
terrible.
Part of the strategy was to maximize the brand value at like Canadian big boxes and like Canadian Tire and like offer them their own like models and stuff. But they shut down the Mexico factory, and they lost a bunch of guys in the NHL because you can't replicate that stick.
No.
Out of China, it's just built completely differently. So they I was just surprised that they bought it, and they bought it essentially they didn't have time for it. And I don't know whether it was like if they had financial pressures at the time. They're a publicly held company. Maybe they didn't want to dedicate their resources. They wanted to cut expenses. Who knows? But the value of having that, at least your pro product, your Easton Pro product being made out of Mexico was tremendous.
Yeah.
And they didn't do that, but the one stick design that they still have in their line, I think, is that oval. That S17 or S19, I guess, was the last one they did.
Yes.
That
S19.
That shape is in one of the Bauer lines.
Oh, I've seen that.
Like Firelight or something.
Hyperlight.
Hyperlight? Is
it's
it
called
Hyperlight? Yeah, but
I think it's called Hyperlight.
Fly something.
Oh, Fly.
Like that shape.
What was the name of that one? Yeah. Flylight.
Yeah, because.
Or something like that.
Yeah, because that was also they bought Mission as well.
Yes, and they bought Combat. Remember Combat? They became True. They bought their name. Do you know what it was sold for? Do you know what they offered Bauer to Easton to shut them down? How much did they give them? Do you know?
Oh, I don't. I heard like 17, 18 million for the hockey business.
Okay. Wow.
Because they bought the baseball business separately, but that was a big acquisition because it kind of drove like the Bauer company's presence and entry into that category. But on the hockey side, there was just, I think in their opinion, there was just so much redundancy, and they just really weren't interested in keeping any of those products. But they did that with Mission when they killed it. They killed the helmet.
Yeah.
They ironically, when Bauer bought Mission and killed the Mission helmet business in the NHL, that is what allowed Easton to enter.
I see.
Like he just left a bunch of guys who didn't have the Mission helmets, and the Easton one fit more like it, or maybe they came in with some money backing it up for the guys. But this it's the big thing about hockey, the hockey business, both at retail and in the NHL, is that it's zero sum. You know, it's not growing at a massive rate. So whatever you're getting, someone is losing.
I see.
Yeah. So the opportunities, you know, like, and if you have 800 guys in the NHL, you know, when a company comes in, let's say they had 80, 100 guys in helmets, and like, yeah, no, we're just not offering you this. You can wear a Bauer if you want. Like, how many of those guys will wear a Bauer, and how many of them will just use something else because their Mission is no longer available, right?
Yeah.
And the same holds with sticks. You know, a lot of the guys that they lost were ironically, they were Bauer guys. You know, they were Bauer guys who used Easton sticks, and if they wanted to use Bauer sticks, they already would have been because they were Bauer guys.
Yeah.
So they started jumping around looking for different products, and it's always a risky run. You know, so I don't think the true cost to them wasn't even the acquisition price. It was the amount of resources they had to spend to keep their guys and to fend off other guys. Like, again, does True do as well as they had? Well, I'll put that in air quotes. Will True do what they've done if Bauer didn't walk from their Easton players? You know, it'd be a curious exercise for someone to look at, you know, when they made that acquisition a few years back, like, how many of those Easton players did Bauer get?
Yeah.
You know, and as a result, you know, how much life did they give to other companies because they essentially went out, spent money to kill a competitor, and they made the landscape more accessible to the other competitors. Yeah. You know, that's always a tough part.
Do you know the number or no of how many guys went?
No.
It's a tough.
But I mean, anecdotally, I can tell you, it's you know, it was definitely more than a few. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, there were. And I don't know if you know, now years later, those guys have come back and they're like, all right, well, this is the best I'm going to do, you know, from everything that's out there, and they just go back into Bauer. But like, I'll give you one example. Was, again, because this one was close to me and I saw it happening. Mm-hmm. Like, Ryan McDonough was a Bauer guy, but he used an Easton stick. And you know, when he could no longer get his Eastons, he kind of bounced around, but he ended up with a CCM. And so he used a CCM stick for a couple of years, and you know, I think in the last year or two, he's now gone back into a Bauer. So I don't know what Bauer they made for him, if it's one of the newer models that he liked more, or, you know, or at some point he just said, all right, you know, this is fine. Yeah. You know, but guys who are more offensively minded and using Easton stick, it was definitely harder for them because the performance was, not to say it was better or worse. It was just different. Yeah. It's a different feel, you know, and you like what you like, you know. So yeah, I'm not going to say, you know, it was, you know, 200 players, but it wasn't 3 either. You know what I mean? Yeah. So yeah, you know, for me at this point, not being involved in the industry, it's just interesting to see from the outside, like how certain things play out.
Yes. Different.
Yeah. So yeah, that's one. You know, they literally sold off the parts of that factory. Like, they sold the oven to a competitor. And they sold all of the manufacturing pieces. They held a sale, and you just came in. Wow. And you put a bid in, and you bought machinery that was you know, being used by Easton, and now was going to a competitor.
Wow, it's amazing how things are done. I learned a lot. Yeah, I want to thank you so much for coming on and talking hockey history with us, and we learned a lot about the industry of the sticks and how things work.
My pleasure, man. Yeah. My pleasure. I got to tell you, I watched your video on your shaft collection.
Oh, holy cow! Thank you.
It's pretty impressive, man. That's really good.
Thank you.
How long have you been collecting?
I collected probably like 6 years. I did a lot of trades.
For 6 years, Jack.
That's a
You
big.
have some old stuff in there.
Yeah. I bought a collection off of a guy. I think maybe
Oh,
about
okay,
25,
okay.
30 shafts for like cheap from Canada. And he was just a guy who
Mm,
built furniture. He had some leftovers. And I picked out the
mm.
ones in the picture that I didn't have. And that kind of started my collection. And then,
Ah,
and then my favorite one of all is the Innovative 700. I like that one.
mhm.
I like
Yeah.
the Easton Stealth that you made. That's one of my favorite ones to shoot with.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, Innovative, the 3000 concave, the Kevlar. That's one of my favorites too. So I have a bunch of favorites that I'm keeping
Yeah.
to
There was
use.
the remember I think you had like the Easton the ACs. Did you
Oh
have an
yeah,
AC?
I had the ACs. Yeah, this the
Yeah, those man,
black
those
and
sticks
black
I
and
like
gold.
too. Those were beasts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're well made.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Well
Yeah,
done. Well done.
thank you, Holmes. I
Well,
appreciate that
yeah, my
everything.
pleasure, Jack. Anytime. I'm not sure what there's left to discuss. Maybe we can discuss Northland in the 50s next time.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
Or what the best roller hockey stick was.
Yeah, definitely.
Take me back to the Louisvilles that exploded in 5 minutes on asphalt. I can tell you about those.
Sure.
But you know, this was a pleasure again. You took me back,
Yeah.
and it was a lot of fun. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. It was great talking to you. Thank you, Holmes.
That was my pleasure, man.
Take care. You too. Thank you.
Take care.
Take care. Bye.